Christmas 2025 in Southern California was supposed to be a time of joy and celebration, with families gathering under palm trees strung with twinkling lights, and neighborhoods alive with the spirit of the season. The air was filled with anticipation, as children eagerly awaited presents and communities prepared for festive traditions unique to the region's warm climate. But instead of the usual holiday cheer, a relentless atmospheric river storm swept in, catching many off guard and turning what should have been a season of togetherness into a time of crisis. The skies darkened, and the sound of rain replaced the laughter and music that typically filled the air. The rain began on Christmas Eve, pounding the region with historic intensity. Streets that had been lined with holiday lights quickly became rivers, flooding roads and trapping cars. Airports, usually bustling with travelers heading home for the holidays, saw flights canceled and families separated by the storm's fury. Families found themselves stranded in their homes, watching as their yards disappeared beneath rising water. Emergency services raced from call to call, stretched thin as they tried to help those in need. Streets were blocked by hastily erected flood barriers, and entire neighborhoods were transformed into hazardous zones overnight. The storm's timing, at the very peak of holiday travel, only amplified the chaos. Overflowing rivers threatened to breach their banks, while mudslides crashed down hillsides, blocking roads and endangering homes. Traffic jams stretched for miles as emergency vehicles struggled to reach those in danger, and the sense of uncertainty grew with each passing hour. From the heart of Los Angeles to the snow-dusted peaks of the San Bernardino Mountains, the deluge became the only topic of conversation. News crews braved the elements to capture the unfolding disaster, while communities banded together, forced into survival mode by the sheer scale of the storm. Holiday lights, meant to symbolize hope and joy, now flickered over flooded streets and mud-caked homes, a surreal and haunting mix of cheer and disaster. The contrast was stark, as symbols of celebration stood side by side with the aftermath of destruction. For many, the greatest gift this holiday season was simply the storm's end. As the skies finally cleared, neighbors emerged to help one another clean up, sharing relief, gratitude, and hope for recovery in the days ahead. The Christmas storm of 2023 shattered rainfall records across Southern California, leaving meteorologists and residents alike in awe of its sheer intensity and scope. For many, it was a holiday season unlike any other, as the skies opened up and unleashed a deluge that would be talked about for generations. The relentless downpour made it the wettest Christmas Eve and day in modern history, transforming festive neighborhoods into scenes of flooding and uncertainty. Streets that were once lined with twinkling lights and holiday cheer quickly became rivers, as water surged through communities unaccustomed to such extremes. In the mountains, the impact was even more dramatic. Areas like Rose Valley were pummeled by over 17 inches of rain, a staggering amount that tested the limits of the region's natural landscape and infrastructure. The usually tranquil pine forests echoed with the sound of pounding rain, as streams and creeks swelled far beyond their banks. Meanwhile, urban communities faced their own challenges. 4 to 6 inches of rain fell in just a matter of hours, far more than city drainage systems could handle. Streets flooded rapidly, stranding vehicles and forcing emergency crews to respond to dozens of calls for help. Downtown Los Angeles, a city more accustomed to sunshine than storms, logged its fourth wettest Christmas on record. Residents watched as water pooled on sidewalks and flowed into businesses, disrupting holiday plans and daily routines. In the suburbs, places like Porter Ranch and Newhall saw rainfall totals rarely witnessed in living memory. Homeowners scrambled to protect their properties, stacking sandbags and clearing gutters in a desperate attempt to keep the water at bay. The relentless downpour overwhelmed storm drains, flooded streets, and sent torrents of water and debris rushing into rivers and creeks. The city's infrastructure, already strained by years of drought and underinvestment, struggled to keep up with the onslaught. Official measurements confirmed the record-breaking nature of the event. At airports and weather stations from Santa Barbara to Burbank, rainfall gauges overflowed, and meteorologists scrambled to update forecasts as the storm continued to intensify. The storm's power was fueled by a potent atmospheric river, a narrow band of moisture stretching thousands of miles across the Pacific. For more than 48 hours, this river in the sky delivered a continuous stream of rain, drenching the region and setting the stage for widespread flooding. The ground, hardened by years of drought, simply couldn't absorb the sudden influx of water. This led to dangerous flash floods, destructive mudslides, and the closure of major transportation routes. Roads became impassable, and entire communities found themselves temporarily cut off from the outside world. This was truly a storm for the history books, defined not only by its timing, but by the sheer volume of water unleashed and the widespread impact it had on millions of lives across Southern California. The storm's toll was measured not just in inches of rain, but in lives lost. At least 4 deaths were directly linked to the severe weather, including a man found in a submerged car in Lancaster and a sheriff's deputy killed in a weather-related crash in Sacramento County. In San Diego, a rain-soaked tree branch fell, claiming another life, while flooding in Redding led to tragedy days before Christmas. Treacherous highways caused fatal accidents, including a deadly crash on the I-5 Grapevine. Each loss was a stark reminder of the storm's real-world dangers. For some, the holiday brought not joy, but heartbreak. These tragedies underscored the importance of heeding warnings and respecting the power of nature. Flooding and mudslides wreaked havoc across Southern California, overwhelming storm drains and leaving entire neighborhoods submerged in water. Torrential rain fell relentlessly for hours, quickly overwhelming the region's aging infrastructure and causing chaos for residents and emergency responders alike. Streets that were once busy with traffic became impassable rivers, and the force of the water swept away cars, fences, and anything else in its path. In Los Angeles and the San Fernando Valley, urban flooding reached unprecedented levels. Cars struggled to navigate the deluge, with some drivers forced to abandon their vehicles as water levels rose dangerously high. Businesses and homes were inundated, and power outages left thousands in the dark, compounding the sense of emergency. The Los Angeles River, swollen with storm water, surged toward its banks, threatening to spill over and flood nearby communities. In mountain towns like Wrightwood, the situation was even more dire. Mud and debris flows, triggered by the relentless rain, buried cars and blocked roads, trapping residents and making rescue efforts extremely challenging. Homes in areas recently scarred by wildfires were especially vulnerable, as loose soil and ash gave way to powerful mudslides. In Little Creek, the main bridge was washed away, cutting off access and isolating more than 100 residents who suddenly found themselves stranded without basic services or supplies. The storm's destructive power was evident everywhere, severing lifelines and leaving communities disconnected. Emergency vehicles struggled to reach those in need, as major highways and local roads were blocked or destroyed by floodwaters and debris. Major highways like I-15 and I-5 were forced to close, paralyzing transportation across the region. Abandoned vehicles littered the highways, and homes near these routes suffered extensive damage, with some even knocked off their foundations by the force of the mudslides. As the waters finally began to recede, the true scale of the destruction became clear. Residents returned to find their homes surrounded by debris, their belongings ruined, and their neighborhoods forever changed. The emotional and financial toll was immense, and the path to recovery would be long and difficult. The storm left behind a trail of chaos and devastation, with destroyed infrastructure, flooded neighborhoods, and mountains of debris. Recovery efforts began immediately, but it was clear that rebuilding would take months, if not years, and require a massive, coordinated response from the entire community. Amid the chaos, a rare tornado struck Boyle Heights on Christmas Day, shocking a region more familiar with earthquakes than twisters. The EF0 tornado, with winds near 80 miles per hour, tore roofs, shattered windows, and downed trees in a brief but intense burst. Residents described a sudden roar and swirling debris, a terrifying moment in an already overwhelming storm. The National Weather Service confirmed the tornado, marking it as a rare event for Los Angeles. Emergency responders, already stretched thin, faced yet another crisis. While no serious injuries were reported, the tornado left a psychological mark on the community. It was a bizarre exclamation point on a storm that had already rewritten the region's weather history. The storm struck at the height of holiday travel, turning festive journeys into ordeals. Over 14 million Californians hit the roads, only to find freeways like I-5 and I-15 impassable from flooding and mudslides. Drivers faced gridlock, detours, and dangerous conditions, with many stranded for hours or forced to abandon plans. Air travel fared no better. LAX saw hundreds of delays and cancellations, while Santa Barbara Airport closed twice due to runway flooding. Terminals overflowed with frustrated passengers, and ripple effects spread nationwide. For a critical 48 hours, Southern California was effectively cut off. The storm exposed the fragility of the region's transportation networks. Holiday travel became a test of patience and resilience. First responders faced a relentless barrage of emergencies, performing daring rescues in raging rivers and flooded streets. The Los Angeles Fire Department's swift water rescue team saved lives, including a woman swept 5 miles down the LA River and a family trapped in their RV. Emergency calls poured in from stranded motorists and flooded homes. Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency, mobilizing resources and sending a clear warning to the public. Evacuation advisories targeted high-risk burn scar areas, urging residents to leave before the worst hit. The coordinated response was crucial in saving lives and managing chaos. The storm tested the limits of emergency preparedness and the courage of those on the front lines. As the storm moved east on December 26, Southern California finally saw a break in the rain. Lighter showers lingered, but the worst was over, and attention shifted to recovery. The forecast promised a stretch of dry, sunny weather, crucial for receding rivers, drying ground, and reopening roads. Cleanup could finally begin, and stranded travelers started making their way home. Meteorologists warned of a possible weaker storm around New Year's, but for now, relief prevailed. The dry spell was a psychological boost for millions who had endured days of anxiety. Communities paused, reflected, and prepared for the long road to recovery. With the storm gone, Southern California began the long process of recovery. The sounds of rain gave way to cleanup, pumps, shovels, and neighbors helping neighbors. Homeowners tore out waterlogged walls, cleared mud, and filed insurance claims. Communities like Wrightwood and Lytle Creek faced the daunting task of rebuilding roads and infrastructure. The storm's aftermath highlighted the region's vulnerability and the need for better flood control and emergency planning. Yet, the story was also one of resilience, of rescue teams, community spirit, and hope. The promise of drier days ahead became a symbol of recovery. Southern California looked to the new year determined to rebuild, learn, and prepare for whatever comes next.